Meet Liam, a brave and perceptive 10-year-old with a fierce loyalty to those he loves. Since his mother's passing, he's been the light in his father Jack's life, the two of them sharing a bond that only a close-knit family can understand. But today, Liam faces a moment he never expected, his father's wedding day. Jack stands at the altar, ready to marry Sarah, a charming woman who's brought excitement and hope back into his life. Yet, for Liam, something about Sarah has never felt quite right. Beneath her warm smiles and kind words, Liam has sensed something unsettling, moments when her gaze turns cold and her charm seems forced. He's tried to ignore it, but now, with his father's happiness on the line, he can no longer stay silent. What will happen when a 10-year-old decides to stop his father's wedding? Is this just a child's jealousy, or has Liam uncovered a hidden truth that no one else can see? This is the story of courage, love, and the lengths one boy will go to protect his family. Stay with us as we unravel the secrets that led Liam to make an impossible choice. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and share your thoughts. What would you do if you found yourself in Liam's shoes? Liam is a sensitive, thoughtful 10-year-old with a vivid imagination and a keen sense of right and wrong. Since losing his mother 3 years ago, he's had only his dad, Jack, as his constant support and companion. Jack, a kind and steady presence, became Liam's world, stepping into every role Liam needed: a father, a mentor, and a friend. They forged a close bond through shared joys and struggles, creating a small but beautiful life together that has, despite its challenges, given Liam a sense of security. Their days are filled with little rituals that make up their life: evening walks around the neighborhood, weekend trips to the park, and late-night chats before bedtime. Jack has always encouraged Liam to be open and honest, to never keep his feelings bottled up. This openness created an unbreakable trust between father and son, and no matter what life threw at them, they always knew they had each other. But life changed one ordinary afternoon when Jack met Sarah. Sarah appeared like a ray of sunshine on a cloudy day, bringing a fresh spark into Jack's life. She was charming, warm, and seemed to have a natural talent for lifting people's spirits. Jack, who hadn't dated since his wife's passing, found himself smiling more, laughing again, and even dreaming about a future he hadn't considered possible in a long time. The emptiness that lingered in his heart after losing his wife seemed to be gradually filled by Sarah's presence. At first, Liam was intrigued by Sarah. She was elegant and sophisticated, always dressed impeccably and carrying herself with confidence. She would bring little gifts for Liam and tell him stories about her travels and adventures, captivating his attention. Jack was delighted, hoping that Sarah and Liam could form a bond, and even imagining the three of them as a family. But while Liam tried to be polite and welcoming, a strange feeling gnawed at him whenever he was around her, a feeling he couldn't quite explain. As Jack's relationship with Sarah deepened, they began spending more time together, and Jack would sometimes leave Liam at home to take Sarah out to dinner or for a weekend getaway. Liam missed his father on these occasions, but he wanted his dad to be happy, so he tried to ignore the pangs of loneliness and unease that crept up whenever Jack was away. He could see how much his father cared for Sarah, and he didn't want to ruin that, so he kept his feelings to himself, hoping that maybe he just needed time to adjust to this new reality. Yet, as the months went by, Liam started noticing small things about Sarah that didn't sit well with him. For one, she seemed to have a habit of only being warm and friendly when Jack was around. When they were alone, her demeanor would shift slightly, her smiles would fade faster, her responses would become curt, and there was a sharpness in her eyes that made Liam feel uneasy. It was subtle, but to a perceptive child like Liam, it was noticeable enough to plant a seed of doubt. One particular incident stuck with Liam. It was a Saturday afternoon, and Jack had stepped out to run some errands, leaving Liam and Sarah at home together. Liam, trying to be friendly, asked Sarah if she wanted to play a game with him. She glanced at him, her face expressionless, and said, "I'm busy, maybe another time." Then, without another word, she walked away, leaving Liam feeling small and dismissed. It wasn't just her words, but the coldness in her voice that made him feel unwelcome. As if he were intruding, Liam tried to brush it off, reasoning that adults were sometimes busy. But these moments began to accumulate. He noticed how Sarah would rarely engage with him unless Jack was present. And when she did, there was a strange, almost forced quality to her kindness, as though she were putting on a performance just for Jack's sake. Liam couldn't help but feel that Sarah's warmth was reserved only for his father, and that he was simply a part of the package she had to tolerate. Despite these feelings, Liam didn't want to trouble his dad. Jack seemed genuinely happy with Sarah, and for the first time in years, there was a lightness to his spirit that Liam had missed. Jack would come home after a date with Sarah, eyes shining, talking excitedly about their plans and dreams. Liam loved seeing his dad happy, so he tried to suppress his misgivings, convincing himself that he was probably just imagining things or being overly sensitive. As the months rolled on, Jack and Sarah's relationship continued to blossom, and eventually, Jack made the decision to propose. When he broke the news to Liam, he looked nervous but hopeful, as if seeking Liam's approval. "Liam," he said softly, "I know this might be a big change, but Sarah, she makes me really happy, and I believe she'll be a wonderful addition to our family. What do you think?" Liam, caught off guard, forced a smile and nodded, not wanting to disappoint his father. Deep down, he felt conflicted. Part of him wanted to trust his dad's judgment and accept Sarah as family, but another part of him couldn't shake the unease that had been building up over the past months. However, he buried his feelings, wanting to support his dad's happiness above all else. The preparations for the wedding began, and the house buzzed with activity. Sarah would often come over to discuss plans with Jack, filling their home with decorations, flowers, and excited chatter. She brought in caterers, florists, and planners, transforming the once quiet home into a lively hub of wedding preparations. Jack was ecstatic, and his joy was infectious, spreading to everyone around him, everyone except Liam. As he watched the preparations unfold, Liam's doubts intensified. The closer the wedding day drew, the more he noticed subtle changes in Sarah's behavior. There were moments when she would disappear into the other room to take phone calls, lowering her voice and speaking in hushed tones. When Jack wasn't around, she would ignore Liam's questions about the wedding or snap at him if he was in her way. These incidents left him feeling uneasy, as if he were seeing a side of Sarah that his dad couldn't. One evening, when Liam was walking past Sarah's open bedroom door, he caught a glimpse of her staring at a pile of documents on her bed. She quickly shut the door upon noticing him, her face hardening as she caught his gaze. It was only a moment, but it was enough to make Liam feel like there was something serious she was hiding. A new suspicion started to form in his mind, though he couldn't quite put his finger on what it was. Despite the warnings flashing in his mind, Liam kept these feelings to himself, fearing his dad wouldn't believe him, or might think he was just being jealous. But the sense of dread continued to grow, and Liam found it harder and harder to ignore. Little did he know, the day was coming when his instincts would be put to the test. The wedding was just around the corner, and with every passing day, Liam's determination to protect his father strengthened. He knew he had to uncover the truth, whatever it might be, before it was too late. As the wedding day drew closer, Liam's unease only grew stronger. Sarah, the woman his father loved so deeply, was beginning to reveal more peculiar behaviors that made him feel increasingly anxious. When Jack was around, Sarah would be warm and affectionate, but whenever they were alone, she would become distant and cold. Her sweet smiles and gentle words seemed reserved only for Jack, while with Liam, she often avoided eye contact or gave him curt, dismissive replies. The secretive phone calls were what troubled Liam the most. Sarah would sometimes leave the room to take calls, lowering her voice and glancing around as if she didn't want anyone to overhear. Once, when she was on the phone in the living room, Liam overheard her mention a name he'd never heard before, Mark. When Jack asked her about the calls, Sarah simply laughed it off, saying it was just work. Then, one day, Liam stumbled upon a strange key in Sarah's bag, a key that didn't belong to their house. When he asked her about it, she casually mentioned it was a spare for her office. Liam wasn't entirely convinced, but without any other way to verify, he let it go, though it continued to linger in his mind. Evenings with Sarah were no easier. Whenever Liam tried to connect with her by sharing his interests, she would quickly dismiss or change the subject. Liam loved astronomy and had hoped she might join him in learning about the stars, but rather than engaging, Sarah would just remind him to focus on his studies and not waste time on useless things. Her indifference to the things he cherished made Liam feel more and more isolated. He couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah was only trying to impress his dad and had no real intention of becoming a genuine part of their family. These subtle signs kept feeding the growing sense of dread in his heart. One afternoon, while looking at old photos of his mother, he couldn't help but think that if she were still alive, things would be different. He missed her and felt guilty for not embracing Sarah, but he couldn't ignore the gut feeling that this woman wasn't who she appeared to be. Then, just days before the wedding, he caught Sarah writing something in a notebook. When she noticed him watching, she quickly shut the notebook and slipped it into her bag, giving him a cold look that sent a chill down his spine. Liam couldn't quite explain it, but he felt as though Sarah was hiding something he wasn't meant to see. Each little moment added up, and Liam began to believe she wasn't the trustworthy person his father thought she was. The tension grew stronger with each passing day, making Liam feel like he was living in a suspenseful dream. He wanted to tell Jack everything he had noticed, to share the doubts that had been growing in his mind. But he remembered how Jack had reacted when he'd tried to express his feelings before. His father had brushed it off as simple jealousy, thinking Liam just didn't want to share him with someone new. Liam didn't want to disappoint his father or bring sadness to what was supposed to be a joyful time. Then, just one day before the wedding, while Jack was out running some final errands, Liam decided he had to find out more. He made his way to Sarah's room, hoping to uncover something that would either confirm or dispel his suspicions. In his search, Liam discovered a locked drawer in Sarah's dresser. He hesitated, but eventually found a spare key that Sarah had left behind. When he unlocked the drawer, he found a stack of files containing names, financial details, and documents that he couldn't fully understand. However, what shocked him most were the photos of Sarah with another man, the same man he suspected was Mark. Liam was stunned as he looked through the files. He realized that Sarah wasn't just the kind woman his father believed her to be. She might even be a con artist. Though he didn't fully comprehend all the details in the documents, it was clear that Sarah couldn't be trusted. The warning signs had been there all along, and now they were glaringly obvious. When Jack returned home, Liam knew he had no choice but to face the truth and find a way to protect his father. But would his dad believe him? Especially when what he was about to reveal would change everything. The night before the wedding, Liam lay awake, unable to sleep. His mind was filled with thoughts about the secret documents he had found in Sarah's drawer. The strange names, financial information, and, most shockingly, a file containing her real name and traces of a life he had never imagined, all pointed to a dark past. Alongside the photographs of Sarah with another man, Liam had discovered an expired foreign passport and documents written in another language, suggesting she had been involved in financial scams abroad. As he skimmed through the documents, Liam saw hints of investigations involving Sarah under her real name, with multiple accusations tied to fraud against wealthy individuals. She had even been deported from a country after her schemes were exposed. And Liam couldn't shake the feeling that his father was her next target. The next morning, Liam decided he couldn't keep this to himself any longer. He had to tell his father, no matter how difficult it would be. As Jack prepared for the big day, adjusting his tuxedo and practicing his vows in the mirror, Liam saw the excitement and happiness radiating from him. Looking at his father, who was so full of hope and joy, Liam felt a pang of guilt, but he knew he couldn't ignore the truth any longer. With determination, he approached Jack, gathering the courage to speak. "Dad," Liam began softly, his voice trembling but resolute, "I need to talk to you about Sarah." Jack turned, smiling warmly. but his expression softened when he saw the worry on his son's face. "What's wrong, buddy?" Liam hesitated, then began explaining everything. He described the strange phone calls, the key, Sarah's coldness when they were alone, and, finally, the documents he'd found in her room. "Dad, I think Sarah isn't who you think she is. I found photos of her with another man, someone named Mark. And these documents, they show strange things. She has another name. And I found evidence that she was once wanted for fraud in another country." Jack's brow furrowed, his face reflecting confusion and disbelief. "Liam, are you sure about this? You went through her things?" "Dad, I had to. She's hiding something big. I know it sounds crazy, but I couldn't ignore it anymore." Liam's heart pounded as he tried to make his father understand. "I'm just trying to protect you, Dad." Jack paused, looking into his son's serious eyes. But then he shook his head, sighing. "Liam, I know this change hasn't been easy for you. Seeing me with someone new can't be easy. But Sarah is a good person. Maybe you're just nervous about the wedding." "It's not that." "Dad," Liam pleaded, desperation creeping into his voice. "Please, just trust me this time." Before Jack could respond, there was a knock at the door. It was Sarah, dressed in her wedding gown, radiating joy and elegance. She smiled at Jack but cast a quick, guarded glance at Liam, only deepening his suspicions. Ignoring Liam's final plea, Jack kissed Sarah on the cheek, reassuring her that everything was perfect. Watching them together, Liam felt a mix of fear and helplessness. His father was blinded by love, unwilling or unable to see the cracks in Sarah's perfect facade. Liam's heart sank as he realized that, despite his warnings, the wedding was going to proceed. Desperate, Liam ran to his room, where he had stashed the documents. Clutching the papers tightly, he made a decision. If his dad wouldn't listen, he would have to show everyone what he had uncovered. It was a risky choice, but with no other option, he resolved to confront Sarah at the altar and reveal the truth before it was too late. As the guests began to arrive, Liam felt his heart pounding louder than ever. He glanced around the room, watching as family and friends filled the seats, eagerly waiting for the ceremony to begin. The happiness and excitement in the air made him feel even more isolated, but he knew he had to stay strong. This was his chance, perhaps his only chance, to stop Sarah from deceiving his father and to save his family from the heartbreak he sensed was inevitable. When the music started and everyone rose to their feet, Liam clutched the evidence in his hands, preparing himself for what was about to come. When Sarah appeared at the end of the aisle, her face radiant with a serene smile, Liam felt a surge of determination. This was it. He was ready to uncover her lies and protect his father, no matter the cost. As the ceremony began, the chapel was filled with a soft hum of anticipation. Guests, dressed in their finest, whispered excitedly, glancing toward the aisle adorned with delicate white roses and golden ribbons. Sunlight filtered through the stained glass windows, casting a warm glow over the room, and creating an air of magic around what was supposed to be the happiest day of Jack's life. At the altar, Jack stood beaming in his tuxedo, his heart racing with excitement. His eyes sparkled with the happiness he had rediscovered after years of loneliness, and his gaze was fixed on the end of the aisle, waiting for Sarah, his bride-to-be, to appear. For him, this wedding was not only a symbol of love, but also a fresh start, a promise of a new life for him and his beloved son, Liam. But Liam's experience of the day was vastly different. He stood to the side, clutching the photos and documents he'd discovered in Sarah's drawer the night before, his small hands trembling with both fear and determination. In his heart, he knew what he had to do, but the weight of his decision bore down on him like a mountain. The thought of ruining his father's big day filled him with guilt, but he couldn't ignore the unease that had grown in him over the past months. He had tried to tell his father about Sarah's secrets, but Jack, blinded by love, hadn't believed him. This was his last chance to protect his father from the heartbreak and betrayal he knew would come if the wedding proceeded. The officiant's voice rose. signaling the beginning of the ceremony, and the guests fell silent. Liam's pulse quickened as he glanced around, noting the faces of family and friends, each filled with joy and excitement for the happy couple. He took a deep breath, his gaze fixed on the aisle, knowing that in a few moments he would have to act. His eyes traveled to his father, who stood waiting with an expression of pure joy. Liam's heart ached. He wanted nothing more than for his dad to be happy, but he also knew that happiness built on lies was fragile, something that could shatter in an instant. At last, the music began, and all eyes turned to the back of the chapel. The doors opened, and Sarah appeared, dressed in a stunning white gown that shimmered in the light. Her smile was radiant, and her eyes held a confidence that suggested she had everything under control. As she walked down the aisle, each step graceful and measured, the guests couldn't help but admire her beauty. She looked like the perfect bride, a vision of elegance and grace. But to Liam, the sight of her was chilling. He could see beyond the charm, beyond the elegance, to the cold calculation he'd glimpsed in those private moments when no one else was watching. With every step Sarah took toward the altar, Liam's heart raced faster. He could feel the sweat on his palms as he clutched the papers tighter, and his mind whirled with the images he'd seen in her secret drawer, photographs of Sarah with another man, financial documents with strange names, and evidence that hinted at a past she'd tried to keep hidden, including a marriage certificate with the name of another man. Liam now knew that Sarah had been married before, to someone she had conned and abandoned. He couldn't let his father be next. As Sarah approached the altar, Liam summoned every ounce of courage he had. He stepped forward, his voice trembling but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Dad!" "Stop!" Liam's voice echoed through the chapel, cutting through the silence. The officiant paused, and all heads turned in shock to look at the young boy who had interrupted the wedding. Murmurs of confusion rippled through the crowd, and Jack looked down at his son, his face a mixture of surprise and concern. "Liam?" Jack's voice was soft, tinged with a mixture of confusion and worry. He hadn't expected his son to interrupt, especially not now. "What's going on?" "Buddy," Liam took a deep breath, steadying himself as he looked up at his father. "Dad, you can't marry her. She's not who you think she is." His voice trembled, but his gaze was firm, filled with determination. Gasps spread throughout the crowd, and Sarah's face paled. For a moment, her confident smile slipped, and a flicker of panic flashed in her eyes. She quickly regained her composure, her face softening as she turned to address Liam, her voice dripping with feigned kindness. "Liam, sweetheart, I know this is hard for you. It's a big change, and you might feel nervous. But please don't ruin this moment for your father." Her tone was gentle, but Liam could see the coldness in her gaze, the calculation that lay beneath her mask of kindness. But Liam didn't back down. He held up the documents, his voice steady and loud. "It's not nerves. I found these." "Dad, I found photos of her with another man, and these documents, they show things that don't add up. And I found something else." He looked directly at Sarah, then at his father. "Dad, Sarah has been married before. She used another name and tricked another man just like she's tricking you. She's not here because she loves you." The guests exchanged bewildered looks, whispers spreading like wildfire through the crowd. Jack's face went pale as he looked at the papers in his son's hands, his expression shifting from disbelief to betrayal. He took a step toward Liam, reaching out for the documents, his gaze flickering between his son and his fiancée. "Sarah." Jack's voice was barely above a whisper as he looked from the photos to her, his face filled with hurt. "Is this true?" Sarah's mask cracked, and for a brief moment, her eyes flashed with anger. She quickly forced a smile, trying to dismiss the accusations. "Jack, please, it's not what it looks like. Liam must have misunderstood something. He's just a child." But Jack didn't look away. He studied Sarah's face, searching for the woman he thought he knew. The weight of Liam's words, combined with the evidence in his hands, was beginning to chip away at the trust he'd placed in her. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of it all, the realization slowly dawning on him. Just then, A voice rang out from the back of the room. "Sarah Evans, we need you to come with us." All eyes turned to see a police officer making his way down the aisle, his expression serious as he approached the altar. The guests fell into stunned silence, and Sarah's face went ashen as the officer stopped before her, holding up a warrant. "Miss Evans, you're wanted for questioning in connection with multiple counts of fraud and identity theft." Gasps filled the chapel, and Sarah's composure shattered. Her eyes darted around, looking for an escape, but she was trapped. She turned back to Jack, desperation written across her face. "Jack, please," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "This is all a mistake. They don't understand. Liam is just confused." But Jack shook his head, his gaze hard and unyielding. "I trusted you, Sarah. I thought we were going to be a family." His voice was filled with hurt, and the pain in his eyes was evident. For a moment, he looked as if he were struggling to hold back tears, the betrayal cutting deep. Liam felt a surge of relief mixed with sadness as he watched his father's expression change. He knew he had done the right thing, but the sight of his father's heartbreak made it difficult to feel victorious. This wasn't the outcome he had wanted, but it was necessary. The officer stepped forward, placing handcuffs on Sarah as she tried to maintain her composure, though her voice was filled with desperation. "Jack, please, I can explain. This isn't what it looks like." But Jack took a step back, shaking his head slowly. "I can't believe I was so blind. I thought you loved me." Sarah's pleas grew quieter as the officers led her away, and the reality of her situation finally sank in. The guests watched in stunned silence, some casting sympathetic glances at Jack and Liam, while others whispered among themselves about the scandal that had just unfolded before their eyes. The atmosphere of celebration had turned to one of disbelief and sorrow. Liam walked over to his father, who stood motionless, staring blankly at the ground. Jack's eyes were filled with pain and confusion, but when he looked down at Liam, a glimmer of understanding and gratitude flickered in his gaze. With a shaky voice, Jack managed to say, "Thank you. Liam, you saved me from a terrible mistake." Liam, overwhelmed by the emotions coursing through him, nodded, unable to find the words. He didn't need to say anything. He knew his father understood. They had both been through a trial, and though the path had been painful, they had emerged from it together. As Sarah was escorted away by the police, the guests began to slowly leave, some offering their condolences to Jack and Liam, while others left quietly, still in shock. Jack placed a hand on Liam's shoulder, drawing him close as they watched the last of the guests filter out of the chapel. After a long silence, Jack looked down at his son, his voice filled with emotion. "I'm so sorry, Liam. I should have listened to you. I let myself get carried away." Liam looked up at his father, his eyes filled with tears. "It's okay. Dad, I just didn't want to lose you." Jack wrapped his arms around Liam, pulling him into a tight hug, both of them allowing themselves to release the emotions they had held back. In that moment, all the pain, confusion, and heartbreak faded away, leaving only the bond between a father and son, stronger than it had ever been. As the chapel emptied, Jack and Liam stood together, their bond fortified by the trials they had endured. They knew that, although the future was uncertain, they would face it together, with trust and love as their guiding light. As the echoes of the disrupted wedding faded, and the guests slowly left the chapel, Jack and Liam stood alone in the empty hall. The scent of roses and candle wax lingered in the air, contrasting starkly with the somber atmosphere that had replaced the once joyful scene. Jack, visibly shaken, looked around at the remnants of what was supposed to be a celebration of love and new beginnings. He let out a heavy sigh, a mix of relief and sorrow. Liam, standing close to his father, felt a similar whirlwind of emotions. He had done what he needed to do to protect his dad, but watching his father's heart break and seeing the disappointment in his eyes was painful. The bond between father and son had grown stronger, but it had come at a cost that Liam had not fully prepared for. They walked slowly toward the exit, and as they stepped outside into the bright afternoon light, Jack turned to Liam, his expression softer now. He reached out, resting a hand on his son's shoulder. "Liam," he began, his voice filled with gratitude, "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been there today. I was blinded by what I wanted to believe. Thank you for being brave enough to do what I couldn't." Liam looked up at his father, feeling a swell of pride. "I just didn't want you to get hurt, Dad. I know how much you've been through, and I didn't want someone like Sarah to take that away from you." Jack pulled Liam into a tight embrace, both of them allowing themselves to feel the release of the tension they had held for so long. For a moment, it was as if time stopped, and they were simply father and son, finding solace in each other's presence. Once they separated, Jack suggested, "Let's go home, Liam. I think we both need some time to process everything." On the way back, the car was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. Jack's mind drifted back over the past few months with Sarah, replaying moments that once seemed genuine but now felt tainted. The red flags he had ignored, the subtle warnings he had dismissed, all of it came crashing down on him. But through the haze of betrayal, he felt a sense of clarity, a resolve to rebuild his life with Liam and to never let his guard down like that again. Over the following days, Jack and Liam settled back into their routine. But things had changed. Jack was more attentive to Liam, their conversations deeper and filled with an unspoken understanding. Jack, still recovering from the emotional aftermath, found solace in spending time with his son, grateful for the second chance Liam had given him. One evening, as they sat in the living room, Jack looked at Liam thoughtfully. "You know, Liam, I think we both learned something from all of this. It's taught me to be more careful, to trust my instincts, and to listen to the people who really care about me." Liam nodded, a small smile on his face. "And I learned that sometimes, even when it's hard, you have to speak up, especially when it's for someone you love." They shared a moment of silence, letting the weight of their words settle between them. Jack then suggested something that surprised Liam. "How about a camping trip this weekend? Just the two of us. I think we could both use some fresh air and a little time away from everything." Liam's eyes lit up at the idea. It had been a while since they'd done something like that together, and the thought of spending time with his dad, away from the memories of the past few days, was exactly what he needed. The weekend came, and they set off early in the morning, driving out to the mountains with a car packed with camping gear and enough snacks to last them a week. As they hiked through the forest, the crisp air and the sounds of nature brought a sense of peace that had eluded them in the days following the wedding. Around the campfire that evening, Jack shared stories of his younger days, times he hadn't thought to tell Liam before. They laughed, reminisced, and found a renewed sense of connection in the simple act of storytelling. When it was Liam's turn to speak, he opened up about his fears and doubts, about how he had worried that his father wouldn't believe him, or that he might even resent him for exposing Sarah's true nature. Jack listened intently, his gaze warm and encouraging. "I'll always believe in you, Liam," Jack said quietly, his voice filled with conviction. "You saved me from something I couldn't see myself. That's a kind of courage not everyone has, and I'm so proud of you for that." As they sat under the stars, the weight of the past finally began to lift. They had faced something dark and challenging, but together they had emerged stronger, with a bond that was now unbreakable. Returning home after the trip, Jack felt a renewed sense of purpose. He started focusing on building a life that centered around his relationship with Liam. He decided to set goals that would help them both move forward, leaving behind the shadows of the past. Jack also decided to seek therapy to process the betrayal and to ensure he wouldn't carry any lingering resentment. Encouraging Liam to join him for family counseling sessions, they worked through the emotions together, finding new ways to communicate and understand each other. Through counseling, they learned the value of honesty and vulnerability, and Jack found himself sharing thoughts and feelings he had long kept hidden. It was a healing journey that brought them closer, and over time, the painful memories of the wedding day faded, replaced by the warmth of new, happier moments they created together. For Liam, The experience strengthened his confidence and sense of self-worth. He had learned to trust his instincts, to speak up even when it was difficult, and to stand up for the people he loved. These were lessons he would carry with him for the rest of his life. Months later, on a quiet Sunday afternoon, Jack and Liam found themselves sitting on their porch, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The air was filled with the gentle sounds of the neighborhood, a peaceful contrast to the turmoil of months past. Jack looked over at Liam, a warm smile on his face. "You know, Liam, I think we've come a long way since that day. And I want you to know, I wouldn't trade this time with you for anything in the world." Liam nodded, a sense of contentment filling him. "Me neither. Dad, I think we're right where we need to be." In that moment, father and son knew that they had come full circle. They had faced betrayal, heartbreak, and challenges that could have torn them apart. But in the end, they had each other, and that was more than enough. As they watched the sun set together, both felt a sense of peace, knowing that whatever the future held, they would face it side by side, stronger and more resilient than ever before. Their journey had been a difficult one, but it had led them to a place of healing, trust, and unbreakable love. Thank you for watching this story on our channel. If Liam's bravery and Jack's journey resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with others who might find strength in these tales of family, resilience, and courage. By supporting Heart Stories, you're helping us bring more heartfelt and inspiring stories to life. Join our community, leave a comment, and let us know, what would you have done in Liam's shoes? We'd love to hear your thoughts.